Welcome to Born on the Bayou Sports, a Houston sports show made for Houstonians by Houstonians. Join Tim Costello and Scott Barzilla every week as they break down the latest in Houston Astros, Rockets, and Texans news. Tim's a former minor league broadcaster, and Scott has written 2 books on the Baseball Hall of Fame. Yeah, if Javier could get it figured out, it would make things a lot easier because he was that guy everybody was counting on this year to be a Cy Young candidate, take that big step forward and help anchor this rotation with Fromber.
Since he's come to Houston, you can look at the development of guys like Carlos Correa defensively, Jeremy Pena defensively. I mean, you can Alex Bregman's, certainly I think a better than average third baseman.
And now you're putting teams in 3rd and 8, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 9. Now here comes Will Anderson. Pin back your ears, let's go. So if you're Bayou born and bred, or just like spending time in the H, sit down, relax, and stay Houston strong. Welcome into another fantastic edition of Born on the Bayou Sports. Tim Costello, Scott Barzilla. Spring has sprung. Baseball is in the air. It is a beautiful time of year, Scott.
It is, and last week you were basking in the glow. We were hearing positive reports of certain guys coming in the best shape of their lives. We're 5 spring games in. Your Astros are 1-4. They couldn't punch it in, from inside the red zone today. Gave up that key touchdown, early in the game, losing 10-3. So, you tell the fans, how does Tim Costello watch and consume spring baseball? I mean, where is your worry meter usually at, and where that goes?
I have watched 0 spring baseball at this point, so I guess that could tell you a little bit about how Tim Costello does it. But yeah, there's no worry meter at this point. The leader in at-bats right now is Graham Kessinger on this team. We've got 3 total at-bats for Dubon, I think, at this point. Guys are getting it loose. They're getting it warm. Hitters are always behind pitchers. I'm encouraged by how the young guys look. Hunter Brown threw 2 scoreless innings. Aaron Getty threw 3 scoreless innings. Not 2 scoreless innings, but not concerned at all, right? Like at this point, this is time to get loose and to get ready. And I can understand if you were on spring training and you went to the game and you wanted to see the team win and it just didn't go your way. Like, okay, yeah, I get it. You're a fan. You're at the game. You always want to see a win. But, other than that, spring's about having fun, I feel like, more than anything. The Astros don't have a lot of positions up for grabs, in my opinion, right now. And so, the guys can get loose. They can have fun. They can be around their friends again. They can, get ready for the season. They don't have to grind. They don't have to hit 400 in spring training to show that they're capable of being on the major league roster, because we know who Jose Altuve is, we know who Bregman is, we know we know pretty much every starting position player who they're going to be, minus left field / center field. But we have a pretty strong idea. We know Chaz is going to be there. We just don't know if he's in left or center yet. But we have a strong idea he'll be in left, with Jake getting the majority of playing time to start in center. So who's pushing? Who's stressing? It's a fun time. It's party time. It's spring training.
Yeah, I don't know if this has happened to you. Are you a user of the MLB At Bat app?
I am. I actually paid for it.
So one of the things is that it's done with me, and I don't know how this happened, but it decided that I'm a Detroit Tigers fan.
Interesting.
And so it's sending me alerts on everything happening to Detroit Tigers, and I've now turned that sucker off twice. And it keeps sending me updates on the Tigers.
Yeah, new team.
And the Astros.
And the Astros. Yeah, new team. You followed AJ Hinch.
Well, it's a second team. So because it clearly states on top that the Astros are my favorite team. And then It just tells me, oh, you want updates on the Tigers? Okay.
I,
Uh,
I think you're lying. I think this is how you're gonna start to explain like random Tigers players. Because for those of you who don't know, Scott and I are big immaculate grid players, and I think Scott's gonna probably start throwing some random ass like Tigers rookies out there at me. It's because he's following the Tigers secretly on MLB at Bat app just to have a little bit of a leg up because he's been getting his ass kicked for a pretty strong time out there. Every now and then,
yeah,
he'll get a little right hand lead and catch me in the cheek, but for the most part, Scott's taking a beat in the ring of immaculate grid.
yeah. I'm the Glass Joe, if anybody remembers the old Punch Out game. Yeah, it's been a struggle, but I'm not going to throw out any Kerry Carpenter things out at you quite yet. But now, when I do not watch spring baseball, so what I do is I peruse the box scores. And one thing I can tell you, like for instance, today's game, it's not a good day to be Dylan Coleman. That was a rough day for him. He gives up 5 runs in a third of an inning. So his bid to join the bullpen on opening day is probably taken a severe punch in the gut. But when you look at the team and you look at the fact they gave up 10 runs, none of them were given up by a guy likely to be on the opening day roster. So, and you had Pedro Leon hitting a home run late. I don't think he's a guy that's going to be on the opening day roster, but he's one that that some people have said, hey, if he gets hot, maybe he pushes his way because he's got infield and outfield ability. So who knows?
I think with Leon, I think a good spring training more than likely makes him that first guy called up on an injury, right? I don't think he's a guy who's really likely to push it out of spring training, but I do think he's a fantastic backup plan to Mauricio Dubon. He's a guy that can play infield and he can play outfield for you just the way that Dubon can. Maybe he's not playing as many positions, but you could find a way to use Leon and cover up a lot of different holes should there be a situation with Dubon at some point during the season. So I think for that point, you definitely want to see some good things out of Leon. But also, let's be honest with you, that's a AAA guy homering off another AAA guy, right? Like, it's a late in the game at bat against a late in the game pitcher. Like, those are both minor league guys, and he got them, and that's great. And you did it in front of the major league coaches. But at the end of the day, that's AAA guys facing off against AAA guys.
So, something I didn't realize, and I learned it on Facebook. Would you like to guess how old Corey Julks is today?
27.
You're going to have to go higher.
Is he 28?
You have to
29?
keep going. He turned 29. I
Interesting.
mean, normally prospects stop becoming prospects at around 25, 26. So, for those people who are hoping, hey, maybe Corey Julks discovers something and, takes the world by storm. I'd love to see it. And, it's not completely unprecedented, but I don't know.
It's unprecedented for the most part when steroids aren't involved. like, yes, we've seen it before, but also, like, we've also seen them drop back down to regularity after they got paid big time for having an out-of-nowhere 50 home run season. Brady Anderson. But no, like, at the end of the day, Julks is who he is, right? Like, at his very, very best, he's a guy who maybe he can play on Sunday. Maybe he can give you an at-bat late in the game. But even now, like, we don't have a Maldonado. You don't need to pinch hit for your catcher anymore if it's Yainer Diaz. Fingers crossed you're not pinch hitting for Jeremy Pena anymore. Where's the pinch hitting at bats coming from? So, like, our extra outfielders need to be versatile guys. They need to be, in my opinion, defensive guys, right? Because if you're going to play Yordan in the outfield in a tight game, in a game you got to win, you want to be able to bring Jake Myers in off the bench and move Chaz to left field and go seal that win in the ninth inning, right? What does Corey Julks bring you at this point in time off the bench in the ninth inning? If I'm going to bring an outfielder in, it's not Corey Julks for defense.
No, and I think what he needs to do, and I was going to say this half jokingly, is maybe take about 5 or 6 years off, go coach baseball at Clearbrook High School, hit a few dingers off the high school pitchers and then, take a bet that he needs to try out, for a major league team, if they win district.
You joke. I hate that movie. A lot of people love it. The Clear Creek Independent School System ruined that movie for me because they played it after every fucking standardized test we ever took. Oh, you finished your tax test? Here's the rookie. Oh, you finished whatever? Here's the rookie. I've seen the rookie like 30 times by the time I graduated high school. And it was just like, I'm over it. Fuck you, Dennis Quaid. Even though you went to University of Houston, and I should love you. But I don't want to see your weird-ass fake pitching motion anymore.
And what's hilarious is my wife and we went to watch that in the theater.
I did too. I thought it was a good movie. I got a sneak peek.
We watched it in the theater. And so you remember that scene where he's driving up to the ballpark at Arlington?
Yeah.
And she's like, he's driving the wrong way on the street. And everybody in the theater is like, shut the fuck up. It's like, there's not a dry eye in the house for any of the
and you're
guys
worried
watching
about
this
the
movie.
car direction.
You're worried about him driving the wrong way at 1:00 in the afternoon for a 7:00 game.
Yeah, but no, at the end of the day, like, Corey Julks' best chance to make a major league roster is honestly to get traded to the Oakland A's, right? Like, that's your best chance to play it. Like, I get it. You're the hometown guy. You want to play in front of your hometown fans. But if you want to play Major League Baseball, like, realistically, it's not going to be with the Astros. There's just not room, hopefully, on this roster for a guy like that, because everybody on this roster has to serve a purpose, right? Like, you've got your defensive center fielder, you've got your hybrid guy in Chaz who can play left, he can play center, he's got pop, he hits for a high average. You've got a guy like Yordan who can strictly play left field or DH. You've got your catcher can come out and play left field. There's no purpose in having a guy like Julks. Like, there really isn't.
Yeah.
We need another right fielder or a right field first baseman combo is really what you need for another outfielder.
Well, yeah, and what you're looking at right now is, if let's say you do want a fifth outfielder, and your competition is Cabbage, who we know can play infield, at least first base.
First base, and that's what I want, is a right field backup for Tucker and a backup plan for Abreu.
Or Durden, who I think offers you more offensively than Julks does, at least in terms of potential. He certainly has more power.
And his defense can't be worse.
Well, I mean, Julks, I don't even know if he was a bad defender.
He was average. He was an average defender.
Yeah, he was an average defender. The problem is that he was one of those guys who, if he's not hitting for average, he has no value. Because he's got a little bit of speed, maybe hitting an occasional dinger, but you got to give me something. If you're going to be on my bench, you got to give me something.
To me, Corey Julks is the definition of a replacement level player, right? When you talk about, like, what a win above replacement, who are you better than? It's Corey Julks, right? Like, he's not a bad player. He is just an average standard player. He doesn't do anything really, really well, but he's not terrible. He is a guy. He is a body. He is a low end of the roster, high end of a AAA roster player. And you're right. You have to serve a purpose. If you're like, let's look at a guy like Matt Stairs, right? Matt Stairs hung around a major league ball club probably a lot longer than you would look at this guy freaking ripping darts, beautiful mustache, kind of a beer belly. But what did Matt Stairs give you when he came off the bench? Was 3 rips. He gave you 3 gigantic fucking hacks. And if he caught one of them, he was going deep. That's why you carry a Matt Stairs, because he's going to give you 3 rips at it a game. And if he catches it, okay.
He reminded me, there's a guy, if you want to look him up on Baseball Reference on your own time. He used to play for the Cubs, Hector Villanueva. I think he played back in the late 80s, early 90s, somewhere around there. And he used to sit there and say he was built like Matt Stairs. And he used to say, when I'm hitting well, they say I'm strong. When I'm in a slump, they say I'm fat. And that's, and you got, Dan Vogelback, is currently kind of banging around. He was with the Mets. I think he caught on with, I can't remember who he caught on with, but he's a non-roster invitee, which, seeing non-roster invitees, have you made that drive into Louisiana on I-10?
I mean, where?
Just, going towards Lake Charles.
Yeah.
So when you go there, you'll see billboards for bands that are going to be playing like a Kashada
Right.
or
Okay. Yeah.
in Lake
Yeah.
Charles, and you're just like, man, I remember when they used to play stadiums. And there's a lot of these guys that sign these days. Here's still probably some of them are still out there. Like, man, I remember like you were borderline all-star. Now you're playing Lake Charles or Kashada. I mean, it's the baseball equivalent.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. The non-roster invitee is certainly a maybe a little slap in the face sometimes for these guys, but then you've got like the classic like Dan Ugla, he was like an all-star and then he was a nobody,
Oh,
right? Like it happens, and that's part of the game. And if you're willing to take that opportunity, sometimes it works out, right? Like you've got guys like Orlando Hudson who got a second chance with the Dodgers, and it was able to turn into a little bit of a revived career for himself. Some of those non-roster invitations work out, but sometimes it's also a sign that, hey, nobody wants me anymore. Um, Maybe it's time to hang up the spikes and get into selling fake workout stuff on Instagram.
okay. So shifting gears here away from the guys playing the Kashada, um, which by the way, Gordon Ramsay has built himself a restaurant in Lake Charles.
No shit.
It's over by it's not by the Nugget, it's not by La Berge, it's by the old Isle Capri,
Okay.
which we used to call Crappy. Um, and so I don't know if somebody who told him sold him a bill of goods there, but letting you set this thing up. So we're going to give our preseason Astro Awards predictions. So we'll start off with the most important one. Who is your preseason Astros MVP?
I'm gonna take the big guy, Big Daddy, your daddy, Yordan Alvarez. I think this is the year where he finally can maybe stay off the DL. I think that's really what's kept him from being in that MVP race at the end of the season. Is when he's in the lineup, his production is there. They've mentioned Spot has mentioned hitting him second this season in an attempt to get him more at bats and get him up to the plate in situations with Altuve on deck, or I'm sorry, already on base, and we'll see. I'm interested in that. When you look at the data behind it, it should lead to like 60 to 70 more at bats a season for Yordan Alvarez, and like at the pace that Yordan hits home runs, that's like 3 to 4 more home runs a year. So like that's an interesting move, right? Like I like that idea. Just add those home runs, add those at bats with runners in scoring position. The Astros lineup is so deep that there should be plenty of turnover at the top of the lineup, and there are plenty of times like let's look at the Rangers game 5 of the ALCS where Altuve hits a home run to go ahead by run, and then like okay, that was it. Altuve was good enough. Bang, bang, bang. But now with that Yordan behind him, I think hopefully he'll get good pitches to hit, and I think you can work the left right the way that the Astros have seemed to like to do over the years. You can protect him with Bregman, then you can follow Bregman with Tucker. At some point, some of these guys are going to have to get a pitch to hit, and I think Bregman's a fantastic 3-hole hitter. He's probably your best all around just hitter, right? He's got power. He's got unbelievable plate discipline. He can find his way on base as a walk candidate. He's one of those guys whose on base percentage is typically 100 points higher than his average. So I think Yordan's going to lead the way this year, long story short. And I think we're looking at like a 40 home run, maybe like a 980, 1,000 OPS season for Yordan.
Yeah, I think that's a solid pick, and I think one of the things that fans have to remember is that you are hitting second in the order once in the first inning, and then after that, it's just how the game goes. And one of the things that we've talked about, in the past, is how deep this Astros lineup is. And so, in the middle innings, he could be coming up with two or three men on base. Because if let's say Pena's hitting ninth, Pena gets a walk, Altuve gets on. Now you got two men on base. Are you going to walk Alvarez to pitch to Bregman? Uh, my pick, I think, is going to be Bregman, and I think it's just based on the fact that this is a walk year. Look at what Correa did in his walk year. Look at what other Boris clients have done in their walk years. And I think, he's come in, he's motivated, and I see him dialing it up to 30 plus bombs this year.
I think that's definitely a great pick, and I think when you look at the way that the lineup could be penciled out, like I said, with Bregman hitting behind Yordan, you can't walk everybody, right? So there's a good chance that Bregman's going to see a lot of pitches. Because you know that Kyle Tucker capitalizes on runners in scoring position. You know he's got the pop. You know Yordan's got pop. So you're like, okay, we'll go after Bregman. Bregman's probably going to see a lot of fastballs this year. I really think that's a great pick. I think Bregman's going to have a great year. But I do think if you hit him behind Yordan, he's in between him and Yordan and Kyle Tucker, there's a good chance Bregman sees a lot of fastballs. And there's not many better fastball hitters in Major League Baseball than Alex Bregman.
Right, and then you keep that lineup going. You got Tucker, who I think some people would pick, and I think would be an excellent pick for an MVP. I don't know, there's debate as to whether or not you hit Abreu fifth or you hit Diaz fifth. I think you could probably go either way there. So now all of a sudden you're going down to the seventh spot in the order, and you're looking at, you're looking at Chaz hitting
I
seventh.
mean, Pena's going to probably hit ninth in this lineup, right?
Yeah, so you Chaz hitting seventh, which means that Myers.
Okay, or Myers
hits
hits ninth. Myers hits ninth and Pena hits eighth. But either way, 7, 8, 9's not. There's still pop there.
Right. So you're, and that's where I'm talking about with hitting Yordan second. A lot of people will sit there and go like, well, you got to hit him in an RBI slot, and it's like, well, that's the first inning. Every other at bat he's going to get is not going to necessarily be Altuve and then him, and that's just freak luck as to where the batting order stops the previous inning.
And let's be real too. There's a guy named Mauricio Dubon who's gonna need to get his ABs too, right? You just agreed to pay him more in arbitration. He had a great year last year. He plays a really good center field. He's a Gold Glover. So there's gonna be quite a few games where Chaz hits and seventh and plays left field, and you've got Mauricio Dubon hitting ninth and playing center field, and then you're back up to So you've basically got another leadoff hitter in Mauricio Dubon, back up to Altuve, back to Yordan Alvarez. So the lineup turns over beautifully in your mind, at least right now, right? So this is why I wanted Espada. This is why you and I both wanted Espada, because you don't have to be the Oakland A's when it comes to sabermetrics and turning Scott Hatteberg into a first baseman to understand how data works. But it's things like this, right? Aaron Judge has been hitting first or second for the Yankees for God knows how long because they want to get him more at bats. When you've got a guy like Yordan, why would you want to sacrifice at bats when you can get him 60 to 70 more ABs a year?
Sure. All right. So now moving to your Houston Astros Cy Young, team Cy Young winner. Who are you going with?
This is a tough one. I think in my heart, I want to say JV, right? I want to say bounce back year. Not even bounce back. I just want to say, continue rolling on. And I think JV has a good year. I think JV probably ends up with a 3.5 ERA. Maybe a 0.8 or 0.9 whip. Good amount of strikeouts. I think the home run rate might be a little bit more elevated this year because he's maybe not going to have as much zip on the fastball. But for me, I think this team's success relies on Framber Valdez. If you look at 2022, this team went as far as Framber took us in the playoffs. Frommer put this team on his back on numerous occasions and realistically won us a World Series. And so I think this team goes as Frommer goes, and he looks fantastic in spring training. He spent the offseason back home opening churches and hospitals and schools, and sometimes that's good, right? Like, just to get back to your roots and refresh and realize, like, what I do out there allows me to come back here and do all these good things. And what I'm hoping is that took some ease off of him. He had a not great year last year, but he looks fantastic. He's lost maybe 15, 20 pounds, but he looks muscular. He's got shorter hair. He could have got overheated with the long hair in the Houston summer. Who knows? I like what Frommer looks like right now from a pitching perspective. His pitches look like they're moving well. The bullpen sessions I've watched some video of have been great. I think Fromber's set for a bounce back. Just classic Fromber year. A lot of ground balls, a lot of 6-7 inning starts. Not a ton of strikeouts, but he just gets deep into games, and he's going to make Louisville Slugger a lot of money by breaking a lot of bats.
Actually, if I were, in my heart of hearts, if I were to pick a guy, Fromber would be the guy. But since, this is, talk radio and we want to, give you
Scott,
a
this is fucking YouTube, bro. This ain't talk radio. We got video right here.
Yeah. So I'll throw out, I think, a guy that I think I'm looking for big things from, Hunter Brown. I think Hunter Brown is going to take a major step forward. I think last year was the first, he pitched a career high in innings, going back to any level that he was in the minors. First major exposure to big league pitching. And just in the second half of the season, he really melted down. So, I've seen projections with him at an ERA around 4, which would be about a run lower than where he was. But I think he's got the stuff to be at a 3.5. And that's not going to make him the best pitcher on the staff, but he might be the most important pitcher on the staff. Because if you see a Hunter Brown at about a 3.5, suddenly pressure's not on Javier to return back completely to 2022 form. Not on Urquidy, who, by the way, 2 scoreless innings today. So I think all of your starters have gone out of the gate and pitched scoreless ball so far in the early going. JV did pitch a 50-pitch bullpen session. So it remains to be seen how his shoulder bounces back from that. But overall with the pitching, I am a lot more encouraged than I was maybe even a month ago.
I couldn't agree more. I think, look, man, these guys have pitched a lot of innings. They've pitched a lot of it, like almost like a whole extra half season's worth of innings when you look at World Series run in 21, World Series run in 2022, ALCS run in 2023, ALCS run in 2020, ALCS run in 2000. World Series run in 2019. Like, these guys have. There's just a lot of innings. Like, and then COVID was such a weird ramp your body up, shut it down, then come back from a quick, let's do another spring training. And that's how JV got hurt. It's been a lot of innings, a lot of weird stuff. And so, I think last season is probably going to end up being a blessing, from a lot of different perspectives. I think you kind of saw a little chink in the armor a bit. I think the division is going to be better on a whole. I think that, but I do think we're still the class of the division based on the way rosters are set up right now. But I do think, this division's looked at differently now, right? For the last few years, it's been the Astros and garbage. Well, now you got another World Series winner come out of the AL West. And when the Astros win in the AL West again next year, what are they going to say? Oh, it was garbage division? No, you've got 2 straight World Series winners coming out of the AL West. It's not a garbage division. So I think in a lot of ways, the Astros, it sucked losing, don't get me wrong, but it's going to be, I think, better for the team in the long run. I think some guys got rest after not having to make another as deep of a playoff run. And I think you're right on Hunter Brown. I think he got a taste of, some failure, probably for the first time in his career, and he's going to have to figure out how to deal with it. And for a guy who grew up idolizing Justin Verlander, luckily he's got a guy in Justin Verlander who he can work with. But I think also one of the biggest hurdles for Hunter Brown is he's got to look at the mirror and say, I'm Hunter fucking Brown. I'm not Justin Verlander. I can love what Justin Verlander did. I could be a kid and I've modeled my mechanics after Justin Verlander. But at the end of the day, I'm not JV. I should soak up all the knowledge I can from him, but I need to learn how to pitch with the stuff that I have. I need to learn the best way to use my stuff. I can't go at this game the way Justin Verlander does because I'm not Justin Verlander. I'm Hunter Brown.
Well, a couple of things on that. They said he is working on a slower curve this year because he's mainly been a fastball slider guy. That's something that Verlander has in his repertoire. He can get that curveball over. And I think when you look at pure stuff, he's not Justin Verlander. I don't think he's ever going to be Justin Verlander. But when you look at his stuff is Justin Verlander stuff. I mean, he's high. He can dial it up to the high 90s. I mean, he's got the stuff to do what Justin Verlander does. I think Justin Verlander has, a edge to him, a bulldog.
And that's what I mean, though. But, look, Justin Verlander walked up to Kate fucking Upton at some point in his life and said, "You, me, coffee, let's do it." I don't got that in me. Do you got that in you? Justin Verlander has those fucking stones. At the end of the day, that's what he is. And there's only one.
Okay, hard question. Because it's easy to sit there and say Josh Hader might be the most valuable reliever as the closer. Who's going to have the lowest ERA between Hader, Abreu, and Presley?
It's tough. I want to go Abreu, but he was so good last year. I think there's no way he can match those numbers again. I'm going to say Presley. I think he's one of those guys, to me, Scott, that iron sharpens iron. I think having someone like Hader with him, around him, is going to make him even better. Do you remember how good he was when he had Osuna back there with him? And he was the 8th inning guy? I mean, he's been fantastic as a closer, but you go look at his numbers the years he was the 8th inning guy, and his ERA was less than 1.5. So, obviously, he was younger, but he's a guy who throws a lot of curveballs. Like, he doesn't rely on a big, huge heater. So, like, I'm not as worried about age and losing velocity. He's still got enough in the tank, I feel like. I think he's in for a great year. I think him and Hader probably figure some stuff out together and do some pretty cool things in the bullpen, in the back end of that bullpen.
I think that's a great pick. I think one of the things that and I think pitchers will tell you this, there's just something about the 9th inning. Because you and I could sit there and look at, hey, we're winning 6-3. Any jackass should be able to go out there and get 3 outs. But you and I both know that's not true. There are some guys that are just incapable mentally of doing it. And so to have him go back to the 8th inning, there were a few games last year where he was getting 2 strikes on guys. He would get 2 outs and 2 strikes, and then all of a sudden, for love or money. I think the 8th inning is a lot easier hurdle to clear. My pick's going to be Abreu because I think, while I don't think he's going to be nearly as unhittable as he has been, I think he finds a little bit more control. Because that's just the one thing that's making him not Mariano Rivera at this point. Because, if you just look at his stuff, you can't hit his stuff.
Yeah, you're definitely right. I mean, right on all accounts. Crazy things happen in the 9th inning. Like, he had a lot of bullshit at one point in the season last year. Like, he just hit a stretch where he couldn't get a 3rd strike. Could not get a 3rd strike to save his life. And I think he just relied too much on that fastball. I mean, the curveball out of the zone. And I think maybe even suffering from a little bit of dead arm, lost some miles an hour off the fastball, so he wanted to stick with that curveball out of the zone because fastball in the zone might have got lit up. But yeah, I think I do want to say though, because I was just looking at Montero's numbers. He had a 2.48 ERA in Texas in 2019, sucked in 2020 and 21, was great again in 2022, wasn't as good last year. I think he could be a mid 2 ERA guy this year. You and I talked on our previous show. A lot of times relievers yo-yo, right? They have a good year,
Yeah.
then people figure them out, then they make an adjustment with a new pitch, they have another good year, then they get figured out. This is going to be a guy who doesn't have to work in a ton of high leverage situations, right? He's going to be maybe your sixth inning guy, maybe a day off for Abreu in the seventh. I could see Rafael Montero finding his groove again because also you got to remember Dusty kept throwing him out there at high leverage seventh inning situations
Yeah.
and he lost his confidence. Now he's going to be pitching in the
Yes.
sixth inning. He's going to be pitching in the seventh inning with 4 or 5 run leads. He could fill that Stanek role where like all of a sudden you look down in the middle of the season, this guy's got a 1.5 ERA because he kept coming in advantageous situations and he got his confidence ahead of him. And now midway into July, he's got a great year going and ahead of steam. And all of a sudden, he's one of the most trusted relievers in your bullpen. I'm not necessarily saying that's exactly what's going to happen, but that's a very best case scenario for Montero that I can see based on what we've laid out on the 7th, 8th, 9th scenario. Tight game, you're not going to Montero in the 7th, 8th, 9th inning. You don't need to. So he's going to be a
Right.
guy who's in advantageous situations who hopefully can get that confidence back because he's still got a 99-mile-an-hour fastball. That's still there.
And this segment has been brought to you by baseballreference.com.
I did go to
Go to
baseballreference.com.
Go to baseballreference.com because one of the things you could do and do yourself a favor when looking at Montero is go to the splits page. And when you go to the splits page, when you see what he did in lower leverage situations, but Baker past May, finally, after he was getting torched in both April and May, finally moved him to the fifth, sixth inning. And look what happened to his numbers after he moved out of high leverage. He was actually a very good relief pitcher throughout the second half of the season, even if you just went before All-Star break, after All-Star break. I mean, it was a completely different guy. Unfortunately, I was hoping that Coleman would be kind of like a Stanek kind of person, at least with his stuff. Maybe, maybe he finds himself, as we go later on in the spring. I hate to sit there and torpedo a guy because of 2 bad outings, which is what he's had. But, I think getting that, of course, I know you saw what happened with our prized prospect that we were hoping would be in the bullpen. You hear that story?
I heard he's sore again or looking not good again, injury
He's
wise.
got the inflammation in his middle finger. The so I don't know. Maybe I don't know what the cause of that would be.
I don't know if I'm ever
Um,
gonna see this guy fucking pitch. Is what I know.
well, what's funny is there was a story.
Should
What did
just
they
should
call
just
that?
pick Brady Aiken again.
What was the guy? Sid Lynch. Did you ever hear the story about Sid Lynch?
No.
When they spelled out his name, spelled it out in a funny way. When you read it backwards, it was like April Fool's Day or something like that. And so is the guy, the Mets. He throws 115 miles an hour. He's got a great slider. Everybody's going, what the hell? And they just completely made him up. That's where I think he is. I think he's a myth. Is until I see him in a major league uniform, he doesn't exist.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like we've all been fooled by it's like a long term prank. Like I think the person really exists. I doubt he even plays baseball, right? Like he might even be like a lacrosse bro who's like out there throwing the ball, the rubber ball around with the net, doing his thing, and he's like, oh, I got hurt again. Sorry guys, but no, I think the same way that we were looking at the outfield and like the bench situation for the Astros, where everybody's got to fill a role. You have to look at the bullpen the same way, right? You've got your late inning high leverage situation spoken for. You've got your pretty good middle reliever spoken for with We were just talking about him.
Montero.
Montero, pardon me. So now you're looking for a lefty, right? If you're like other than Hader, if you want to go that way, you're looking for a guy who can give you 2 innings, right? If your starter only gets out of the second or third inning, now I'm looking for a guy who can give me 2 or 3 innings. And I think I'm looking for maybe one more big time strikeout guy. I'm looking for someone that if in the middle of the fifth or the middle of the sixth we're in a big time jam and I need one out with the bases loaded and I'm coming to you for a strikeout. That's kind of what I'm looking to fill right now.
What I liked, and I've liked what I've seen of him so far last year and this year, Ronel Blanco. Through 2 2/3 scoreless innings, the first, start of the gate. I don't see him as a starter long term, but I think he and Brandon Bielak can kind of, I hate to call it this, but I've always called it your designated loser, which is basically your starter's been bum rushed in the second or third inning, and you got to get somebody in there who can throw you 3 innings.
I mean, mop-up's mop-up's a big deal, right? Like you have to play all 9 in this league, and you don't want to waste your good arms when you're down 8-0.
Yeah, so I think that's going to be an interesting competition. Bielak is a guy that he's been a fringe mop-up guy starter. He's a guy I really don't want starting games.
I don't want him in games.
He's just way too hittable. But the thing is, if you're down 8-0, who gives a shit if a guy gives up 3 runs in 4 innings?
See, I don't know though. I feel like the mop-up guy should keep it 8-0. I don't know. Like at least,
ideally,
to me, Brandon Bielak number one is out of options, right? Like if Brandon Bielak does not make this team, he has to go through waivers, and the odds are someone like the A's or someone like the Angels or there's other losing teams out there are going to try and pick this guy up. Like he's good enough to start on the worst team in baseball, right? Like he's good enough to be the number 5 starter on the worst team in baseball. He's not necessarily good enough to have a roster spot on what I would say is the best team in baseball, or at least the best team in the AL. But he is good enough to be the 5th starter for the Cardinals or the 5th starter for the Rockies, right?
Oh, what a sad franchise that is. No, I agree with that. That's why I like what I see from Blanco so far, because he's shown me some things last year too. Where
he had some spot starts during injury situations where he came up big.
Yeah, so I would love to see him as that long guy, because the other thing you want to have with a long guy is a guy who, oh crap, JV can't go this time. We got to get somebody in there.
Yeah.
Who can at least give us like 4 or 5.
Yeah.
And then, and I think, he could be that guy. I don't know that we have a big strikeout guy. Maybe mid-season, and this is one of the things where we got to look at the baseball season as, that added dimension of time, that your roster doesn't necessarily have to be set March 28th. You can have a guy, and maybe Aaron Getty could be that guy. Maybe he's not the guy on March 28th. But maybe in, say, like July or August, he could be a guy you could throw into the bullpen and be like a flamethrower who can get, that one out with bases jacked.
Absolutely. Or it's France. I think France could fill one of those roles. I think he's also dealing with a little something injury-wise right now, so he's not going to be a March 28th person. But the way that the starting rotation shakes up right now, JP France is kind of the odd man out. I don't mind him as a guy who can give you 2-3 innings. I don't mind him coming into a game. Yes, he had a bad bullpen outing in the playoffs, but I don't like that. We were going to lose that game. It is what it is, right? That Rangers team had our number at home. We were bum rushed from the start. I like JP France. I think he's a guy who brings versatility, and I think he had a real nice rookie year, and I think he's going to be somebody who's no longer dealing with a newborn mid-season. And I think that's going to be really helpful as well. Like let's be honest, Scott, like you can sit there and talk about like yeah, my wife does a great job. Like, it's still exhausting. Like, my wife does.
No,
My wife wakes up more than me.
yeah,
My wife wakes up way
he's
more than me for the baby, but it's still exhausting having a
he's
newborn.
yeah, yeah, he's not a flamethrower though. He's more of that, that Ronel Blanco. He could, the thing is that with his arm the way it is, he's not going to be able to ramp up to be a starter by March 28th, but could he throw you a quality inning by then? Could he be a member of this bullpen? I think it's possible. I think it's possible he could, ramp up to that point and then slowly build up, by throwing, maybe some long relief outings. Who knows?
All right. Well, we're going to have to call a little audible as the Astros conversation went a tad long. Let's move it on towards our Houston Texans, Scott. A lot of open roster spots available because last year Nick Caserio signed a lot of one-year prove-it deals. And quite frankly, quite a few guys proved it. And some other guys kind of still have some more question marks in the air. They did some good things, but did they do enough to justify bringing them back against everybody else on the marketplace? And that's what we need to discuss here, Scott. A lot of Texans up for grabs. Who are you, writer for Battle Red Blog, Scott Barzilla, recommending the Texans bring back?
I think my number one guy, ironically, is going to be Blake Cashman. And here's why.
Love it.
When you look at, I don't know if you go to PFF, Pro Football Focus, at all.
I don't. JJ told me not to, so.
Okay. You got to listen to what JJ says.
Yeah.
But if you go look at his grades, he grades high against the run and in coverage. And if you look at, the history of Texan linebackers, like you remember Zach Cunningham, you remember Bernard McKinney, those are guys that were two-down linebackers. Those are guys that you didn't want anywhere near the field on third down. Well, now the Texans, if you re-sign Cashman, you have two linebackers with him and Christian Harris who have enough speed to guard either tight ends or backs out of the backfield or be a spy. We saw this in the divisional playoff game. They were the most successful against Lamar Jackson when either Christian Harris or Blake Cashman were spying him. When they used anybody else, Lamar Jackson was killing them. So he's my number one guy. Number two, I'm going to go just looking at the landscape. I'm going to go Dalton Schultz because I don't think there's a lot of tight ends available. I don't think we're going to be getting a Bowers in the draft. I don't think we're picking high enough to get there. So I think Dalton Schultz is number two. And my number three is going to be kind of weird, but I'm going to go with a Hawaiian, and I'm going to go with Fairbairn. Just because, I know people think kickers are a dime a dozen, but we saw it. We saw when Amendola couldn't kick anything beyond 45 yards. He's a weapon, and he missed a couple of kicks. He missed a kick against the Colts. He missed a kick against the Ravens, but I still love what he brings overall.
I think I love two of the three picks. I think there's tight end talent out there that can be had, that can either replicate or probably even do more than Schultz did. A lot of drops for Schultz, and he's good, not great in the run game. I think he's serviceable, but I think there are other guys who can be better. And if we're willing to accept good, not great in the run game, then let's go get a guy who like Jonnu Smith, who just got released, who is a freaking burner at tight end, right? That guy is elite when you look at the speed that he has. He had 500 and something yards last year as the second tight end on the Falcons behind their all pro level second year tight end. So, for me, Schultz is a guy I'm not as worried about. I think Fairbairn's a great pick. I think a good kicker, a reliable kicker, is a thing you don't have to think about until you have to think about it. right? You don't think about the kicker position until your third string running back is out there kicking a very important extra point to win a football game, right? It's just like, oh shit, there is a difference here. Or when you've got, the fill-in kicker who's just not as good. And I think Fairbairn's got a great leg. I think he likes being here. I think that's a great pick. I think Cashman's a great pick. I think when you look at those 49ers defenses, the reason they are so good is because they can keep their two linebackers on the field at all times. And it's tough to run the football when you've got Fred Warner out there and you've got who's the guy who tore his Achilles jumping up and down on the sideline?
Yeah.
Either
I
one.
know who you're talking about. Yeah.
When you've got two beasts at linebacker out there at all times, even in those shotgun sets or spread sets, it's still tough to run the ball because you've got two hogs in the middle who can also run and cover with your tight ends. And so for that reason, I think you're right on Cashman. So then that third spot, I think you look around, right? Can you get better at the pass rusher spot than what you had with Grenard? I don't know. I don't know if you can do better than that. Can you do a better running back than you had with Singletary? I think the answer there is yes. I think you let him go. Can you find better quarterback play than Steven Nelson for the price that you're willing to pay? Howard was just released from the Dolphins. Gilmore and Stingley are hitting it up on social media trying to convince him to come over here. So this is where it starts to get interesting. How do you want to allocate those funds? Because I think Cashman is probably going to be pretty affordable. I think $5-6 million a year over like 2 or 3 years probably gets the deal done. Kaimi, $3-4 million a year over 3-4 years?
Maybe a little bit more, but yeah.
So now Grenard, that's pricey. Pass rushers are pricey. Nelson,
I don't think you get better than Grenard.
But how much do I have to pay Grenard?
Right. I think you can get cheaper than Grenard and get close to Grenard production.
And that's where I have to start looking at, is it worth it to bring you back at your new number, right? If I could get you back for similar to what I paid you last year, I'd say yes to all those guys, right? I think realistically, out of those, the one that I really am probably going to bring back is Singletary. And I'm going to bring him back to serve the role that I hoped he would have served last year, is the receiving running back or the third down back. Because I want to go get a guy like Saquon. But when you look at what, say, like the Niners do, they split McCaffrey out wide and they still have another good running back in the backfield ready to go.
Well, I'll give you a scenario because I'm actually running an article on Battle Red Blog on Thursday. And I love to do the player A/B test, and I just put all the free agent running backs, and I took away their names. Said, let's look at their production. Saquon Barkley right now, the estimates for him are 3 years, $36 million, with $20 million guaranteed. So basically 2 years guaranteed. Would you rather do that, or would you rather get Singletary and Austin Eckler for $12 million a year combined? I mean, as a third down kind of back and a change of pace back.
Sorry, guys, I had the mic muted there. I was saying I don't want Austin Eckler. I don't think he's got as much left in the tank as some of these other guys. I think Saquon, in the right situation, in the right offense, can play at an MVP level again. I think the same can also be said for Josh Jacobs. I want one of these guys who could do it all. I think that Derrick Henry is run into the ground. I think that the Titans have churned those tires. But I think the same is said for Eckler. I think the last 2 to 3 seasons, he's been the whole focal point of their offense in LA.
Do yourself a favor. take a look at the numbers and the total numbers of carries, you're going to be surprised. He does not carry the ball that often.
It's not just carries, though. It's touches. The guy will get 12 catches a game.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that running him between the tackles, that's what the Chargers were doing. That's stupid. That's patently stupid. Well, in fact, I wouldn't run anybody in the tackles in Houston. I wouldn't operate. And if we got Barkley, I'd be happy. But I don't know if there's another back out there that could complement Singletary at a similar price, where you can get Singletary and another guy.
Then I'm fine losing Singletary, because what I need, then honestly, with a guy like Barkley, that might be the kind of offensive situation that suits Pierce perfectly, because I need a power back. I need somebody who I can split Barkley out wide and then put this guy in a single back formation behind my quarterback in the pistol, right? And now I'm versatile. So I don't necessarily. So maybe I guess my choice is Grenard. I'll go back to that, because at this point I need somebody opposite of Will Anderson Jr. I don't want him going into year 2, which is such a pivotal year, without a consistent pass rush from the other side, because they're going to focus way too much pressure on him. They're going to focus way too much pass protection his way. They're just going to shift everything his way, and I don't want him getting discouraged at this point in his career. J.J. Watt had his biggest year in year 2, but also he had help. He had help all over the place. That defense was stacked in year 2. So, he's got Connor Barwin, Brooks Reed, all on the other side of the field working as well. So Will Anderson's going to need that help also. And if you want him to be elite, you can't be double teaming him all the time. You got to respect the other side of the field.
So what I'm looking at,
go get me Joey Bosa or Nick, whichever one's from San Diego, L.A.
If you take away Schultz, because Smith is an intriguing tight end option.
So is Fant. Look up Noah Fant's numbers.
If you open up my third slot, basically what I have in my mind is, if I'm Nick Caserio, I have a number that gets me Jonathan Grenard. I have a number that gets me Steven Nelson. And I have a number for any of those other guys. You mentioned Gilmore, you mentioned Howard. I have a number in my head. Whoever accepts that number first gets it. Because I think, both of those guys, I think, served important roles, but both of those guys can very easily price themselves out of Houston. And I think that's going to be the issue with both of them.
Absolutely. It's got to be, just like we talked about with the Altuve extension, the possible Astros extensions, you got to want to buy into what we're building here. If you want to stick around in Houston and play with C.J. Stroud and build something, you can't be out to break a record with your contract. Like, we have too many holes to fill to pay $25 million to multiple players this offseason, right? It's not happening. So if Grenard will take 4 years, 60 with like 30 of it guaranteed, I'd do it in a heartbeat. But I doubt that's what he's after. But time will tell. Time will tell there.
So, do you do with Nelson, would you do say 430 or 325 or, something along those lines?
If I'm being honest, I just don't know if I want Nelson back.
That's the problem. If you think Howard is better and you think he'll come for that price, if you think
he's from the area,
better,
he's a native son of Houston. If I'm going to spend money on a corner, there's better corners. And I think last year was a tough year to go get free agents to play in Houston because we were dog shit. Now we've got the next best thing, the next new thing at quarterback that everybody wants to play with, who's personable, who's out making the rounds, who's mixing it up with players who all seem to really like him. Go get me an upgrade. If I'm going to pay good starter money to Nelson, pay it to somebody else. Nelson gets burned. Nelson gets burned way too much.
Okay, that's fair enough. All right, speaking of burnt.
Actually, Scott, we're cutting it close on time, and we're gonna move past Rafael Stone.
Okay.
We're gonna.
Okay. Fair enough.
Like I said, we're calling it Omaha, and we're going to a segment we're going to call Big 12 versus all y'all.
Okay, so here's I'm setting this up for you, Tim. You're going to go to Vegas or your nearest casino, and they're going to offer you odds, even money, Big 12 or everybody else. Who are you putting your bet on?
Take the Big 12. When you look at the depth of this league, what you have to go through to even make the tournament, to be a winning team and make the tournament being in the Big 12, you're tournament tested. You're battle ready. Then you look at the teams coming out of the Big 12. A lot of real contenders for the NCAA tournament in this league, right? You've got Kansas. You've got Texas Tech. You've got Waco. You've got the University of Texas. You got Iowa State, highly ranked. And oh, by the way, I haven't even mentioned the number one fucking team in the country that won tonight, your University of Houston Cougars, baby. But at the end of the day, those are all teams that are viable, could get hot, win the national championship teams. I'll take those odds on even money all day. I've got 6 to 7 teams that I could easily see a path for them through to the final.
And here's the funny thing. I don't know if you saw this last week. You know who was number 4 in the country?
Last week was Iowa State was 6. I'm not sure who was 4.
Arizona.
Well, coming to the Big 12
member next year. And so this Saturday is a big grudge match here on the show. TCU, who managed to upset the Cougars on their home floor, what we used to call the Daniel Meyer Coliseum. We are going down there to the Fertitta Center this Saturday. Do you have any score predictions for us for that game?
What was the score of the last one? It was like 60s, wasn't it? It was in the 60s.
Yeah, I think we won by 2. I want to say
you won by 1.
One or 2. Yeah, it was a nail biter.
I think UH wins by like 7. I think they'll be up by as much as 15. And it'll get tight late, which has just for some reason been the trend the last 3 weeks. UH just had huge leads and then had to hold on late. But I do think the Cougars win. I think the defensive intensity will be something that TCU is not ready for. And I think the Fertitta Center will be popping. I don't know if you've noticed, that's the place to be in Houston lately. The celebrities, they're not sitting sidelines at the Houston Rockets. Much like this podcast, they are skipping right over the Houston Rockets to head on down to the Fertitta Center.
Well, I'm with you there. In fact, I'm going to go 10. I think that margin is 10. If you look at TCU's numbers, TCU is in the top, I want to say 10 in the country in both steals and transition points. U of H is a veteran team. I don't think they're turning the ball over, particularly on their home floor. And the problem is with TCU is that, when you lead in transition points, that means your half-court game is probably not nearly quite good enough. And so I think, TCU can take advantage of teams that have bad guard play. Well, last time I checked, U of H doesn't have bad guard play. So I think it's going to be, it's going to be about a 10-point game.
U of H might have the best point guard play in the country. Jamal Shed, who I've talked about a lot on this podcast. I hope he's a Rocket. I hope he's a Rocket, man. I that's the kind of guy that the Houston Rockets need in that locker room. But yeah, I think it's gonna be a good game. But I really don't see TCU pulling this one out, man. No offense. This team is humming right now. The defensive intensity that this basketball team has, it's at a whole new level. And guys like Emmanuel Sharp are really, really starting to find their role. Right, this is a guy who it was a top recruit, high school coach's son, breaks his leg in high school his senior year, has a rod inserted in his leg. Really didn't feel like he started playing his best basketball until this summer. And he's explosive. He's playing defense. He's hitting clutch threes. those are the kind of role players that have to find their role and step into it perfectly to make that tournament run, right? You're going to have the guard, you're going to have the senior leadership, but there's always that one guy that steps up. And I think UH is starting to find that in Emmanuel Sharp to complement, great guard play and LJ Cryer and Shed. And again, you've got two good big men in that roster as well with Juwan. Guys, kill me. I just watched the game. Either way, UH has a litany. They've got three real good big men. Tugler's young and raw. Then they've got Thomas, who's real raw but real tall, and Juwan. It's not coming to me. Juwan is his first name. But great front court, good back court, streaky three-point shooting, which in the tournament, when it streaks the right way, that's what it takes, right?
All right, so moving us on to that favorite segment of the week. At least we assume it's your favorite because it's our favorite. Before we get to a plethora, to expand your vocabularies, a plethora of scumbags, who are you tipping your cap to this week?
Scott, I had a pretty good week. So it was actually pretty hard to kind of come up with a good tip, right? Because, a lot of good stuff. Hard to pick one specific thing out. But, I'm gonna give my tip to just get a chance to play some golf with my dad this weekend. He is also a member at the course that I'm a member at with, but has not played in probably 3 months. And so I got him out there a couple times this weekend for 9 holes a couple different times. And just getting to get out there and play some golf with the old man and just relaxing and having a good time and seeing him take a little time off from work. The healing power of golf, Scott. That's my tip of the cap this week.
That's a good call. Mine is more of a tribute. I haven't talked about this on the show, but we had I'm going to say a kid. He was 31 years old. Ricardo passed away a week ago Saturday. They just had the memorial service this past Saturday, and he was a great kid. It was his first year as a teacher, if you can believe that. And he was a guy that, just really wanted to do a good job. And so he was trying to soak in as much knowledge as he could. And he and his wife had just been married for just 4 years. They got married during the pandemic. And it's over. He had abdominal cancer. He got diagnosed in early September, late August. And he had stage 4. And, he's gone by February. But a tip of the cap, a great memorial service. They did it in both English and Spanish. The officiant did a great job, toggling between English and Spanish. And just seeing a lot of the coworkers there to support him. It was a good moment. And I just want to tip my cap to him because he lived those 31 years right. So now you got to pick out from a multitude of scumbags. You got to pick yourself one, Tim.
So I think you and I, do you want to go our main one first or the runner-up or honorable mention first today?
We'll go honorable mention.
Okay. On a lighter note, my honorable mention is Wendy's. According to a national survey, Wendy's is already the most expensive fast food restaurant of your choices. And if you haven't been paying attention, fast food is way more expensive than it used to be. I had my normal McDonald's food is normally like $7 in the app with a rewards points or whatever. It was $10 last night. It's outrageous. Wendy's has decided they're going to introduce surge pricing, meaning that during peak lunchtime, your hamburger could cost as much as $1 more. But if you get it, at 10:30 in the morning or like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it could be as much as $1 less than the advertised menu prices. what the fuck are we doing? I feel like the restaurant menu situation has long been figured out. This is the fucking item. This is the fucking price. We don't need to reinvent the wheel on how to price our food. The burger costs X amount of dollars to make. In fact, I should argue that it is easier to make the burger during peak time because you're just firing off fucking patties because you know people are coming in. I would argue that during slower times, when you have to make just my burger by itself, it's more expensive to you because the labor is being used solely on my one burger. It is the stupidest fucking plan I've ever heard. Wendy's is getting roasted. And this is a company that like made social media news for roasting other companies. They're now getting absolutely destroyed, and rightfully so. This is
What?
one of the I grew up in the restaurant industry. This might be the stupidest fucking thing I've ever heard in my life. Could you imagine?
What?
Could you imagine like I don't know, cuz like it's
The last time I went, the last time I went to a Wendy's, I got a single, a single combo. You want to guess how much I paid?
like
This is a
$9
burger, fries, and a drink.
like $9.
No, it was like 12.
Oh my god.
Yeah. No.
Last time I went
Here's
to
the way.
Wendy's, I got
Here's
diarrhea.
here's what you do with this dynamic pricing. You have the kid at the in the window sitting there, look out and go like, does that look like a Mercedes to you? Okay, that's $15. That person's driving a 1974 Chevy Chevelle. Let's give it to him for 7. I mean, that's how you do dynamic. You do some Robin Hood pricing, which I don't know. We started watching a show. I don't know if you've seen. Have you heard of a show called Hot Ones?
That's the one where they have to like eat the really spicy wings, right?
Yeah, and it's an interview.
Yeah.
So who did they were? Who was it? It was not all. John Oliver.
Okay.
John Oliver was on there, and he talked about he did that in the grocery store. He would look at it, sit there, and say, "Okay, you're rich. I'm gonna go up 50 cents on that can of beans." And then the next, oh man, you're feeding a family of 5. Okay, we're gonna go $1 less. And his employers actually let him do it. But okay, my honorable mention, less serious scumbag. The NBA, you've got to get this All-Star weekend. Y'all need to go back to the drawing board on this. Now, the NFL, the Pro Bowl was a mess. Nobody wanted to go because everybody was afraid they were going to get hurt. And what did the NFL do? Said, okay, we're just going to create some fun games, and we're going to play some flag football, and it's become an event again. No, it's not going to get primetime coverage, but it's an event again. Baseball, you've got home run derby, which still gets a huge run. The All-Star game, people still want to go. The NBA, you've got, what was it, the Eastern Conference scoring like, what was it, like 210 points? What the hell? What are we doing? At that point, I do like the celebrity game because he has CJ Stroud dropping 30, in the celebrity game. That's nice. But the dunk contest is old. There are no new dunks. I don't know that there are any dunks that could be new. So, maybe we can create some new skills competitions that might, actually, do something different. But I don't want to watch a 210 to 185 game. That's just not entertaining to me.
Absolutely. It's to me that for the longest time, the night before the All-Star game has always been better than the All-Star game. For the NBA, you got the three-point shootout, you got the slam dunk contest, you got the skills challenge, and then I don't know what it is. I'm a sucker for the celebrity games. I love them. I love them I love the celebrity softball game. I love the celebrity basketball game. It's fun. So to me, those have always been more fun. And you're right, the NFL figured it out. I don't need to see no blitzing, like limited tackling. Like I don't need to see that. Baseball's really the only game where you can replicate the actual sport because of what the sport is, right? Like you still got to get up there and take your hacks and you still got to get up there and throw the ball. That's just what it is. It's the only game where you can still play a legitimate exhibition at this point in time. And that's what it needs to be, is an exhibition. It doesn't need to decide the fucking home field advantage of the World Series. But again, every sport has fucked up their All-Star game at some point. Baseball at least figured out a way to get back. But yeah, it's a disgrace.
All right, so who is your big winner/loser this week?
Scott, this one is a tough one. The state of Oklahoma school system is far and away my scumbag this week. State Superintendent Ryan Walters, on his own, is a giant absolute piece of shit. He decided that hiring the lady from Libs of TikTok, Kaya Chiric, who, by the way, doesn't live in Oklahoma, and called in fucking bomb threats to schools in Oklahoma because she didn't like some of the material that they were teaching. He hired her. He thought this is a good fucking move for the school system, so that way the curriculum could be free of wokeness. What actually happened is you hired a fucking bigot who puts constant anti-gay and trans messages out. You've normalized that type of rhetoric, and you got a kid fucking killed. Someone was beaten to death in the restroom in one of these schools. And do you know what the response of the Oklahoma school system was? It was to say that the death wasn't related to the traumatic brain injury received from the beating that this young student received. I can't imagine that poor child's last moments. I can't imagine that family's anguish to get that call. And then to have this motherfucker out there making that comment when a kid was beaten to death in a fucking bathroom. He was jumped and beaten. And you've got the school liaison officer saying, well, we don't know if that's what did it. Are you fucking kidding me? I'm not fucking the world's greatest detective, but I think I could figure that one out. I think when someone gets kicked in the head a fucking shit ton of times and gets a traumatic brain injury, I think that means something. But these fucking pieces of shit don't even look at this as a human being. They see them as a trans person, and they're subhuman. And this whole school system is so fucking broken. It's a national problem, but the national problem is that we let states do this. The national problem is that we let idiots like this, we let some fucking lady like the person running the Libs of TikTok campaign have any influence over a state school board that she doesn't fucking live in. And the fact that you, as a state in Oklahoma, aren't rioting in the fucking streets. The fact that you are not lighting up your local representative's phone board, demanding that this woman be fired, is a travesty. In fact, it's emboldening their voters. And that's why the Oklahoma fucking school system are scumbags this week.
Well, you know what keeps Texas out of the Gulf of Mexico, right, don't you?
Oklahoma's bullshit.
Because Oklahoma sucks.
Texas sucks too sometimes, man, and I know that's something you're thinking about.
Speaking of, so the Texas state legislature has decided that they have figured out the solution to our school counselor shortage problem. Now, in full disclosure, folks, I have a master's in school counseling. I am certified as a school counselor. Why am I not a school counselor? Well, number one, they don't tend to hire a lot of men. That's just kind of a fact of life. But number two, they don't offer enough money over what I'm getting right now to justify, the hours, the extra hours that I would make. So instead of saying we're going to offer more money for people to be counselors, They said, we're going to hire chaplains. That's going to be our solution. Now, I was a catechist at St. Bernadette's. So, do you want to know what my qualifications were to be a catechist at St. Bernadette's, Tim?
It's a little class, a little seminar.
No, I raised my hand and I agreed to volunteer. That was my.
No, you have to take there's the test you have to take or class you have to take to be around like underage people.
Yeah, you have to be virtuous. Yeah,
yeah.
They call it safe. They call it safe environment now. Yes, that is
I've
true.
taken that. So that's it though.
In order for me to be in charge of retreats, they required me to go to a retreat seminar, which was a single evening. So I could do the same thing and be labeled a chaplain. I could go online, take an online course, and I could be a chaplain. Okay. Do you know how long it took me to get my master's, Tim?
In school years or like in life years?
In life years?
30 years.
I mean, just from the moment I started.
I'm saying birth to when you got it. I'm guessing.
Oh yeah. I got my master's degree around when I was maybe 28, 29.
Good guess.
5 years. Now, in order to be a counselor in the state of Texas, here's what you have to do. You have to have a master's degree in school counseling or as a licensed professional counselor. You have to pass a certification exam, and you have to be a teacher in the classroom for a minimum of 2 years. Those are your qualifications. I've been a counselor before. I've been a counselor at the elementary level. It's hard work. It's not easy. And to sit there and say that we're just going to hire some guy, and as well-meaning as they may be, they don't have any training in it. Like, do you know what a school counselor even does? I mean, think about your high school counselors. What did they do? They made sure you were they made sure you were in the right classes. They would give you advice in terms of like, here's what you need to do to apply for college. Here's, how you can get some scholarships if they're good at their job. They also have to deal with students that, may have disabilities. We have a special ed counselor on our campus. She deals with all the students that have disabilities. Do you think we could get some yahoo that got a chaplain certificate by taking a 3-hour course on, I want to be a buttfuckingminister.com and say like, hey, I'm a chaplain. You can hire me now. I mean, the whole thing is it cheapens everything that I went back to school to do.
Absolutely.
And it's something I eventually want to do. I mean, right now, our special ed counselor, she's planning on retiring in another year or two. That's a role that I could just slide into. And that's a role that I would want to do. You know how pissed I would be if I could see some jackass, who's like, well, I got my degree here out this.com in 3-hour training. So no, they're going to hire me now. And some districts have already started to do it. I know where Barbers Hill is.
Yeah.
Barbers Hill's already started hiring chaplains.
And you know what's going to really piss you off, Scott? Is when that blah, blah, blah.com is Joel Osteen chaplainministries.com. Because that's the next part of the grift, right? Is when Jerry fucking Falwell and Joel Osteen and now his daughter, they get in on the game because they made enough political donations to these people so they would say, yeah, we could do political chaplains. So now they're going to run an online course and it's going to talk about anti-woke. It's going to talk about all this other bullshit, but it's going to train the chaplains. And because it's Joel Osteen running it or one of these famous preachers running it, it's going to be approved and it's going to be bullshit. And it's going to be Texas, y'all.
There's no way in hell I would want my daughter going to a hard-nosed Protestant chaplain counseling. Now,
I don't want my kid going to a chaplain in a public school, period. If my child wants to, like for me, for example, looking back on my life, some of the most productive conversations I ever had about growing up and just life in general. We're with Father JJ, a man that you and I both know very, very well, as he was the pastor of our church. But do you know where I went and saw him? In his church fucking office, because I had that relationship with him at church. I didn't have a relationship with him at a school. I built that trust with him through church. And that was I knew he was my guy because we saw life the same way, because he was my religion. What if I'm a Jewish kid? I gotta go talk to fucking the pastor of the local Lutheran church is now my school counselor? I don't go to a secular, I don't go to a religious school. Why am I being forced to talk to a fucking chaplain?
Well, one of the courses I took, and it was a great course, was I took a course called religious counseling. Now, this is a semester course. This is not, I passed an online quiz. And so basically the whole idea is that I learned about all the major world religions. So that if I encountered a student that was, say, Hindu, or a student that was, say, Buddhist, or a student that was Muslim, or Jewish, if I encountered any of those kids, I could at least have a passing knowledge that I could pass on, that I could speak to them and not offend them and gain a rapport with them.
Right, but you and I both fucking know that is not what this is, right? Because in the military, right, the chaplain was kind of a similar thing, right? Like the chaplain was there for all men. It didn't always necessarily have to be Christian, right? Like it was Christian themed, but like if you were a Jewish guy on the battlefield dying, like they're going to give you the blessing that you want to have at the end of your life. That's not what this is. This is Christian chaplains. These are, you know what the advice you get when you go into their office and you have a tough time? Pray on it. That's literally what these kids are going to get. Well, I think you should pray. Because they're not going to have any real advice. They're not going to have any, nothing good can come from this, Scott. You're absolutely right. This is just another example of the Texas legislation being giant piece of fucking shit.
And there was a Democrat on the floor that wanted to offer some common sense amendments of, geez, can we at least make sure that they, went through some organized, ordination process and not just online? I mean, because do you know how long you go in to be a deacon in the Catholic Church?
It's like 2 years, isn't it?
7.
7 years? Oh, wow.
You get a master's degree.
Okay.
You get another master's degree out of it. Yeah. It's not theology. I think it's like pastoral
studies or whatever it is.
Yeah, something like that. But here's the thing. You're getting advanced training at least.
Right.
See, to me, it took me 5 years going at night to get my counseling master's. I did it while I was teaching. I went in the summers. This is how I was able to get out in 5 years. I don't want some jackass who went online and got like a 3-hour seminar and said, hey, look, I'm a chaplain. That's an insult. Even taking away all the concerns over religious, shoving down religion down people's throats, which is a very real concern. Just, they don't know anything about scheduling. They don't know anything about how a degree plan works.
No, I guarantee you, if you, I'm a big fan of the show The Wire, and there's a big portion of The Wire where they say follow the money. If you follow the money, Scott, I guarantee you there are large donations being made from churches because they want to be able to hold these seminars and make money on them. Guarantee it. Guarantee that if you follow the money, there's a grift. There's always a grift with these fucking people. And there's a kickback in campaign donations because you know what? Here's an election cycle. And a majority of these fucking small landmass little schools in the Texas prairie, they're going to love this shit. But those of us in like major metropolitan areas, fuck that. That's not how we live. If you want to be religious, that's your choice. But that is your choice and it's not shoved down your throat. Texas, our legislation is always scumbags, but they have proven themselves here once again, Scott.
Absolutely. And we left a few scumbags on the table. Maybe we'll revisit them next week. Or maybe we'll just have new scumbags.
There will probably be new ones. There will probably that this is America. There's plenty of
This is,
scumbags.
there's always an asshole. There's always an asshole right around the corner.
But that's all we've got for you here this week. It's been a fun week. We hope that you guys are enjoying the new format and that you've enjoyed the switch to video. It's been a blast kind of learning how to do some of this stuff on the back end and making sure that things look as good as possible and the production quality is there. But I've enjoyed doing it for you. Be sure you're following us on the Facebook page. Be sure you're following the YouTube page. And be sure that you like and subscribe on whatever podcast app that you find us. But it's been a blast. We look forward to seeing you next week on Born on the Bayou Sports.